Hello and welcome to Plant and App Low Code Campfire. This is our episode for Friday, February 17th, episode number 85. And the main topic today will be for Open Lines Friday. The Low Code Campfire is a community gathering where we gather together to share ideas with each other and to actually look to each other for help with things as well. So we encourage everyone to jump in, show something they are proud of or something they want help with. And everyone else be ready to help with ideas and suggestions. All these webinars are recorded and they're published on our YouTube channel. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel by scanning the QR code you see. And we try to, as much as possible, keep track of the timings of these so that you can go through and find specific things that you want to go back and review. Our agenda is always pretty simple. We'll do some introductions and then we'll do a first call to see if anybody needs help with anything. We'll check out any new contributions we have to our Campfire website and look at the feature requests on our community, Plant and App community site. Cover any submitted topics if there are any, and we like to use some Campfire terms, and so we'll do ghost stories and dark corners. When we're done, we will stop the official recording, and then anybody who cares to join, we can stick around afterwards for our afterglow session where we have a more free flow discussion. So please jump in, show things. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat window or raise your hand or even just unmute because this is an open meeting style. And the guidelines are simple. We ask that if there's noise behind you to please mute unless you're talking and then be courteous to each other. And please participate. Dale has often threatened to start singing, and I'm going to offer the same threat this time. If we don't have participation, maybe I will just start singing. I hope that doesn't encourage you not to participate, just so you can see it happen.
That thought
you can submit questions and topics ahead of time by scanning this QR code, and we encourage you to do so. So we have pre-planned discussion topics. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump into introductions, and I'll say good morning to Mark and Ben, because that appears to be all we have with us today.
Good morning,
Patrick. Good morning, Ben. That's odd.
Morning, guys.
Yeah, that is.
Or the three.
Okay, well, I mean, I knew that Dale wasn't going to be here. Obviously, that's why I'm kicking this off, but yeah.
So, Ben, I don't have a burning question to you. You go ahead.
I'm waiting for the singing.
Well, I do have one idea, something to discuss. Actually, I was hoping that that Jim Anthony would be on with us because it's something that he and I actually talked about yesterday, and I just wanted to talk about it some more because I think it's a good topic. So maybe we'll just move into that. And what I wanted to talk about was strategies for opening and showing contextual data to end users. So Jim came to me with a scenario where he had a listing that that has a link to another listing, and the subsequent listing has a lot of data in it. And but even though people may have access to the pages that are before, that are in the breadcrumb to get to that page, he doesn't really want them navigating to those pages because it confuses things. But it's from what I saw, the amount of data in the grid is a little bit more than maybe you want to do in a pop-up. And so we just talked about some different ideas on how to deal with that. And I wanted to I wasn't able to share this with him when we were meeting, and I just want to find the correct window here. But I wanted to share it on here, especially if he was here. But then, see, I think this is the one. Nope. just escape from here and, oh, I see, I have it here. Okay, so what I was going to share with Jim and anybody else on the call was that one of the things that I like to do, this isn't a good example because the data that I'm going to show here is just a detail page for this particular entity, but it would be a good strategy in his case. And so if I click this, well, it was working before. I hope it is now.
That's my favorite line, Patrick. It was working before.
Okay, so it opened up. So if this were a grid with a lot of data in it, obviously we would have the room, but what I've done here basically is taken out all the noise, so that and in this case, you know, if somebody really wanted to, they could just get rid of my URL string here, which is obviously getting rid of the all the menu and breadcrumb and everything, and just showing our specific content that we want. But the one thing I was talking about with him is then, you know, how do you get back to where you were? And I have this close button here. I think that a better label for it would be go back. So if I click that, it just closes that open tab. And that was what I was suggesting as a possibility to Jim yesterday for his specific use case. But I think there's lots of other ideas. One other idea I have on this page here is that I can show contextual data with a button and doing an inline grid. So this is another really handy way to show contextual data. And then of course we can do contextual data in pop-ups, and there's lots of you know, there's other possibilities I think too. So I was wondering, do either of you have ideas on how you share contextual data?
I mean, so you're basically saying one item pulls out multiple child records?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've done it in the past. I would just basically do it as a pop-up grid.
Yeah, yeah, a pop-up grid is another thing that I mentioned to him. I didn't know with his scenario, the grid that he was showing had, I would say, at least 10 columns, if not more. So I suggested the pop-up to him. I said, but he seemed to like the idea of going into a new tab, so that's why I suggested this idea, a new tab with everything removed from it, and a close button to allow somebody the way of navigating without having to use their browser controls.
I mean, I like the pop-up idea because it keeps everything centered on one page as opposed to having multiple pages that you're then going to have to manage.
Yeah.
If he's talking about a situation where he's got a lot of columns and he's afraid it's really not going to fit well in a smaller pop-up window, you know, then that begs the question, should there be a serious consideration of the redesign of the child grid that's appearing? Instead of having so many columns, compress some of those columns so that the data is put into less columns. Like what I've done in a lot of cases is I stack information. So I may put like a customer ID and then a date and something else, and then another column would have 3 lines and another 3. So instead of having 12 going across, I may have 3 columns, each one with 3 lines of data. It makes it a little bit of a wider row, but much less columns, and you see all the data in one shot.
I totally agree with you. And that was the other thing I said to him is that he was directing to a default created entity listing. And I was suggesting to him that it might be a good idea to copy that, use it as the inspiration for something that you then edit down to the data that's absolutely necessary for the end user to see in the contextual situation. And that makes it a lot. And I like your idea also of taking some of that data and stacking it and to make fewer columns. Excellent. I don't think either of you need to see any details about how I did either of these. I guess I could show just real quick for the benefit of anybody who might be watching this. But so if I go into my my listing here, what I've done is I have this button here called Show Applications, and it has some conditions on it to as to whether or not it'll appear. So we don't want to show contextual data if there isn't any. So that's what I'm doing here, is putting a condition there to make sure we have contextual data. And then we have this custom detail view, and then in the custom detail view, I am embedding another grid from another page. And I know that we've covered details on how to do this in other episodes. So I think if anybody was interested in finding out more about how I did this, then I would encourage you to do a search, and you can find that on YouTube definitely. But this code right here for embedding the grid is provided to you by the grid itself if you choose the embed option from the advanced settings on the settings tab of the grid settings. So
And
that's how. Go
you
ahead.
included the query string parameters right there in the
Right.
embed
Yep.
code.
Yep. Exactly. So I have the default embed code included from the grid, but I also included the specific parameters that are needed to populate the grid with the correct data, for the correct contextual data for the item that I'm clicking on. So this is the ID of the item in the current grid, and it will filter the resulting embedded grid based on the ID of the current row. Good point.
Patrick, I'm not the client here, but you showed the two things that you did. I really like the one where you did this exact same thing and you showed it in line. I thought that had a very nice presentation.
Mark, your sound cut out briefly there. You liked what I did, and it was it another?
Oh, this thing looked good.
Oh, okay. Yes. Thanks. Yep.
Okay, this should help the microphone, I think.
And another and this is something that's on that's also on one of our Low Code Cafe episodes. Another thing that I've done before in the past is actually used an API data source to load data from another site into the embedded grid. So that's a possibility as well. And then as far as the opening the details in another tab, I mean, that was simply a matter of I took this link formatting here, and I added the important stuff, which is everything that comes after. So of course the ID, so the specific ID to provide to the new page, and then all the URL parameters. And the most important thing here is well, the print mode equals true gets rid of any if you are logged in as any sort of administrator that has the persona bar or something like that, that helps get rid of that. I didn't use the no skin. I think this is an important thing I want to point out, because I know that a lot of people will be familiar with using the I forget what the exact parameter is, but it's basically loading the page without a skin on it. But what I did use is I used the page builder no menu BS5 skin. And this is really useful because it includes Bootstrap styles, and so it keeps your modules working correctly with the Bootstrap styles, but gets rid of all the other noise on the page. There's no menu included.
That looks good.
And then of course the container is the no card, no title container. And then of course the target _blank to open a new tab. And then the one additional thing I want to point out about that is I won't be able to get into edit mode if I go there, but let me just open that page from here. So this is the page that's opening in the new tab, and this is what it looks like without the URL parameters. But specifically the close button, something you'll notice here, if I click this, it's not working. So I want to just point out that what I use there, simple stuff, but I just wanted to make sure we take a look at it. That is in the title form. On the close button, oh, I switched there. I'm simply using in the bind expression on change click window.close. The important thing to note is that window.close doesn't work unless the window has been opened programmatically. So that's why it's not working in this situation right here. But then if I go back to the page I was on and actually open the window programmatically, then my close button works just fine. And that takes me right back to where I was. Cool.
Interesting. Thanks for showing that.
Yep. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I can't think of another way to do it. I think that kind of, it covers it in my awareness.
Cool.
So Patrick, there was something that I suggest we could talk about. It. Interestingly enough, both Ben and I have experience in discussing this topic already. There was a topic brought up in the Campfire website asking about controlling the order in which modules get loaded on a page. Ben, did you see that today going on?
No, I didn't see that today. I'm sorry. No.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I think Banyan, Bance is asking the question. He just says he's got a lot of modules on the page and he would like to control the order in which they open or become visible, depending on the way you want to word that. Ben and I have gone back and forth on that topic quite a bit in other threads. And, I want to ask you, Patrick, one of the times that Ben and I were going back and forth with that, Mihai spoke up and said, hey, we're going to work on this at DNN Sharp at the time, not Plant and App, but that was in 2021. And I'm just wondering, I see Ben shaking his head. Yeah. What can you tell us? Have you guys worked on controlling the order in which things load on a page?
I'm not aware of that. If it has been something that's been looked at, I certainly recognize the need. I can see definite situations when that would really help. I'm just looking at this now. And I know that in the past I felt that at times the order has mattered, but I do know that there's been a lot of discussion where recently where that has, people have very clearly stated that that's not the case, and that's not something I've tested in a while. So, and I don't know if that's something that's changed or if that's always been like that with DNN. Ben, do you have any?
Honestly, to my knowledge, it's honestly always been this way.
Okay.
I think what honestly happened, and it's something that I'm to this day I'm still dealing with, is and I cannot speak for using Bootstrap 5 yet, because I have sites that I just cannot move to Bootstrap 5 just yet, so I'm still stuck at 1.1.8. But I don't even remember when this happened, but I know many, many, many years ago, DNN Sharp, the action form module used to load almost instantaneously. There was a point in time where something was done to it where it loaded a lot more information at the time of initialization, and action form probably slowed down by a good 3-4 times its original speed. I noticed it almost immediately when it happened. I've gotten used to it. But what I have found is, especially if you're on systems that potentially don't have too much CPU power, what's happening is action forms tends to take a very, very long time to load. And grids don't have the same overhead, and they tend to load a lot faster. So if you happen to have forms and grids on the same page, even if the forms come before the grids, you will notice that the grids will appear one after another while your forms are still loading. And then when they load, they push everything down because they suddenly appear. I've gotten around that myself because in my particular situation, I was able to dump everything that I needed into a token that generated HTML. And then I put that into an HTML module. HTML modules load instantaneously, and then it just runs the token and gets back the data. I don't have any of the overhead of an actual action form. That's how I got around it. But I know that that's not always the case. You know, it's not as simple, especially if you need an interactive form to be loading. But all that being said, from my understanding, all of the modules basically just load. There's no real order to them. If anything, it's just going to be the order that they're on the page, but it doesn't appear like they load in order because of the fact that forms takes a while to load.
I just looked this up because I thought I remembered it, and I found it that they're in tab modules. There's a column called module order. I assume that is based on the stack direction from the layout.
Correct.
And interestingly, what I'm seeing is that I haven't sorted by tab ID. That's why. Okay. Yep. So, but I was just wondering if that had any impact at all, but probably not. But if anything, from what you just described, you think it's possible that maybe initialization is beginning in order, but because of the different time frame for each individual module, some things are finishing faster than others.
That'd be my
Exactly.
impression as well.
I've noticed it mostly basically with forms. Grids really don't have much delay other than loading the data itself, and truth be told, it loads data quite quickly. But I've noticed that forms are the big culprit on that delay. So, if you have an action form on it, even if there's almost nothing on the form, apparently it must have a heck of a lot of overhead that it's still loading up, because everything will load faster than a form. Then again, like I said, I haven't seen Bootstrap 5 version. Sorry, not to cut you off, Mark. So I don't know, because I know Bootstrap 5 pushes all of that to the skin. So I don't know if action forms, when utilizing BS5, load significantly faster or not.
So my experience has been that it is loading faster with that Bootstrap 5. Fast enough to make the difference in this, I'm not sure, but I do think that it's significantly faster. Mark, do you have an opinion on
I'm
that?
trying to remember if pages that I have in my mind are loading, I guess more aesthetically pleasing or all at one time. I can't really say that I have. I really have to pay attention to that now. Yeah, I'll have to pay attention probably after we get off the call.
An idea that I just thought of is that perhaps I'm just tossing ideas. I don't know what the possibilities are, but perhaps there could be a setting in listings and forms. I'm not sure if it would be necessary in tabs or not, because that doesn't really make sense. But a setting in listings and forms to tell a specific module to wait to initialize until initialization is completed on another module.
That's
and be able to specify that module from a dropdown.
That's honestly kind of what Mihai said they were looking into. I mean, I would I would love to see a feature like that where, you know, in the settings of forms and grids, you can basically say that it's dependent on the loading of another module. What I would love to see beyond that would be potentially, if possible, multiple module definitions. So to say like this grid, don't load it until this module and this module finish loading. So it waits for everything ahead of it to load so that you can make sure that all of the modules above the stack are loaded and displayed before something else appears. That would be the best ideal solution for me.
It's yeah, and it sounds like the probably the most achievable way of controlling it. Now, whether or not it is you know really possible to do that, I don't know. Maybe there would have to be some sort of a contextual output from the module you're waiting for. I'm not sure, but it sounds
I mean,
like
if you want, I can show you really quick on one system that I have, like I said, that delay.
yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, where are we? Share.
I think it's conceivable that we could control the order using the on and it sections of a form.
Can
And
you
we
guys see this?
call the second form once the first form has been there a little bit? But it's haphazard, you know. You have to put an estimate of how much time before of waiting before calling the second thing. It's an estimate.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay, so just really quick, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit refresh. You saw that delay? This is a
Yep.
form, and on the form, all I have is 2 titles and 3 buttons. That's it. There's no major calculations going on here or whatever, but that was a significantly long load time. It had nothing to do with how complex this form is because there's really nothing on it, just a bunch of buttons. Not even a bunch, 3 buttons. Okay. The only reason this blue bar up here used to be a form, I couldn't stand it anymore because this took forever to load. Now it loads almost instantaneous because it is a HTML module and I just have a token in there and I told the HTML module to tokenize the tokenize the information. But you know, just again to show you this form, there's just static text. It's just the menu titles and then my buttons. And you know, the
no events.
condition is minimal. Just an inject data, which I have to update.
Which is not even running right now.
Correct.
You have it, yep.
So nothing on events. All it is a bunch of buttons. So it is the overhead of this module that is causing the biggest headache. Because however much data it is loading, it is significantly slowing down the load. And then, you know, God forbid, you have a form that's complicated with a lot of its own stuff that it's doing. That just adds to it.
.1.18, Ben?
Yep.
Just curious.
So you did something, so you just moved those tokens into it, that you didn't do anything to like, because you're that form is not, or nothing's relying on one another there, right? There's no reliance in those modules. So there's no specific need here for things to load in an order. You're just demonstrating the.
I'm right here. I'm demonstrating. I don't. Well, I just have to be careful because this system does have
live data.
Live secure information, and for educational purposes, I cannot release that.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's fine.
But in situations where, for example, you know, I have some information showing up top in a form with a grid underneath, the grid would appear with all the data. And then the information that's kind of like the parent information that's supposed to be showing up on above it in a form isn't showing up right away because the form's taking so long to load. And
Yeah.
then when it finally does load, it pushes everything down. Now, in the grand scheme of things, is that a major problem? Not really, it's more of an annoyance. However, in a situation where the grid appears, and let's say they're like, oh, and they see a row and they immediately want to click a button, if just right before they click that button, the form appears and it pushes everything down, you have a very good chance of clicking the wrong button because
Yeah.
the rows move on you and you might be clicking the same button, but on a different row because everything just got pushed.
Mhm.
And that was happening quite often to a lot of our people. So and that was because of this guy up here, this blue area.
Mhm.
When that appeared, you could see that's about the size of one row. So it would literally push all of the rows down pretty much by one. So they
Mhm.
would just end up clicking on the row above it instead of the row they were on. And then, for whatever reason, it would carry out that action on the wrong data row. So once I put it in here, I was good. But here's another example. Let's say I click on this. This is honestly just loading another pop-up form. Same thing. It's a form in a pop-up.
Yeah.
This is how long it takes.
I mean, this to me, this is unusually long, and I can't explain why it's happening in your situation. But this is not, from my experience, it's not typical to me.
Mhm.
I don't know why. It's really, but I don't. Mark, do you think it is that
No, I don't
amount of
think
time?
it's typical either.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this is typical, and I know
Yeah.
that this one's a little bit slower than most. I'm unfortunately kind of limited on resources.
Okay.
So as you can see, it's a dual CPU with
Mm.
4 gigs. This is what this department can afford,
4 gigs.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But all in all, still, even with that, it really shouldn't be that severe.
Mhm.
I will definitely say that most likely a big chunk of it is the fact that the resources are not the best. But I think the fact that the form also is so bloated that
And how
it's
about
compounding the problem.
the server that that's hosting this? Is that
What do you mean?
the database server and the web server? Are
Are
they?
the resources ample?
Yeah.
They're separate machines. They're pretty much comparable. So memory is 8 gig on this one.
Okay.
But this is also a very, very oops. Wait, that was not the wrong. I'm remoting a machine, so I just clicked on the wrong one. Task
Okay.
manager, this one. I clicked on my task manager. With this one, we're talking quad CPU. So this is basically double. The SQL server has double the resources that the IIS server has.
Okay.
But again, all in all, number of users on here is, if at any one given point we have at this point, because it's like a beta rollout, if we have like 8 users on it at any given time, that's a lot.
Okay.
So, that being said, this is not like it's hundreds and hundreds of users pounding it at the same exact time. Right now, I'm pretty sure if maybe one other person is using it right at this moment, that's about it.
So just today, I was proposing a situation where maybe a form could control the order in which things get loaded. Like maybe if you were to designate a hidden form as some kind of like a traffic controller. And okay, in this scenario, it would, we would put code somewhere that would reserve a height in the panes that are going to contain our modules. We set a height. We could even put a background picture that would be entertaining to watch while we're waiting for things to load. And then the traffic controller would then load first, and then, well, it would load whenever it loaded, but then it would turn on or make visible the modules that had loaded already, but their visibility was set to none, or their display was set to none, not their visibility. Meaning they would be loading, we would be watching the interesting pictures in the background, the size, the height of the panes would be reserved so things aren't bumping around. And then all of a sudden the traffic controller would jump in and say, okay, you can be displayed, you can be displayed, you can be displayed. You could even turn them all on at one time in JavaScript. So I think it doesn't make anything load faster, but what it does do is it controls all the jumping around that it does the way it is now. It's a visible improvement at best.
I agree. It won't, that type of idea I don't think will make a difference with regards to speed, but it will make a difference with regards to the UX, the UI, and how, right, and how it loads. However, I would go a step further. I would say rather than saying using an action form to do that, perhaps a new module that would be developed, and call it a loading controller module. And if you put that on a page, that it would sense and see all the modules there, and then you can say which module is related to which, whatever, put your definition of how you want it to load, whether it be one module waits for another module to load, or you want to explicitly say load this first, this second, this third, whatever it is. That's how we define it, and then that's the one that controls it.
That sounds a lot better. That depends on Plant and App to develop something like that. Or Ben.
Correct.
Well, I will definitely discuss these ideas, bring them forward. Just loading a page that a page where I can't even count the number of modules on it. And it loads really pretty decently considering everything that's on it. I'm pretty amazed at how fast it is loading.
Just out of curiosity, what's the resources on that?
Well, yeah, my system has 32 gigabytes of memory. So yeah, and also the server it's on is an Amazon an AWS server. So that's I can't remember, but it's got pretty decent resources as well. I can't remember exactly what it has, but which yeah, certainly that does make a difference. But just let's see, that's 5, 10, 15, just approximately 20, 25. I'd say there's close to 30, maybe more actually. I'm continuing to scroll. There's at least 30 different forms and listings and tab. Well, there's one tabs module and then forms and listings, and many different tabs with all the forms and listings on them. It's a very, very complex page that actually was created by Jen Sharp for her site, uspa.org.
I liked having Jen Sharp on here the last time that she presented. I know that she's been hanging out in the Campfire sometimes. I think she could speak up some more. I think she's got things to share.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And as she was developing this page, we talked about the amount of modules on it and what's the limitation, and I said we're going to get to a point where it's going to definitely affect the performance. I said, but let's see where you can push it to and see how it goes, and so she clearly pushed it.
I think in this line of work where we are manipulating data, I think that we allow ourselves a little bit more leeway in fast loading times, because, you know, other designers of other websites might think, well, my loading time is extremely important. It has to be really fast. But here I think we're thinking, well, this data is really important. It has to be there. So if we have to wait a fraction of a second, we're going
Yeah.
to wait a fraction of a second.
And this page is a back office page. So,
Yeah.
you know, the staff are using it. It's not a, it's
Yeah.
not a customer facing page. So there's that also. And did it load immediately? No, it did not. It didn't. It's not like I clicked on the page and all of a sudden I was seeing stuff. There was a delay, but it was not. It didn't feel like it was an uncomfortable delay. You know how sometimes you get those uncomfortable delays where you're like, okay, I should be seeing something by now.
Mhm.
It wasn't one of those. Yeah.
Where you wonder if your screen froze.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys. This has been a good discussion.
So Patrick, on another topic,
Yep.
I just contributed something to a previous, I'm trying to remember if it was a community portal post or a feature, but I'm trying hard to remember. But it was the issue of the ability of an action grid to change, so we could change the column widths. And at one point I reported that that was really cool that I could change the column width of a column in a grid, but the problem was that the contents in the column didn't change. The width of the contents didn't change to conform to the new column width, which essentially rendered it ineffective to change the column widths because the contents didn't change, just the column width. So you had extra white space in your column.
Yeah, and I
It
remember
wasn't
that for a
being
while
used.
back. And what version are you in? Because I feel like that was something that we actually addressed. Because
I'm looking
I
at 1.24, and
oh, are
I
you
just
okay?
had a grid, and I changed the column width, and all I got was white space for my effort. So yeah, I went and I researched it. I looked into it, and I found a class that I could adjust with CSS.
Yeah, yeah, and I've experienced exactly what you're talking about, and I've done the same thing. And I need to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that we have that recorded as a in our internal system. So where did you put that? Was that on the forum or?
I think I was. It's probably in a forum, and it's
Okay.
probably in a post that's quite a few months ago, and I just added to the bottom of it. Is there a
Okay.
way to search for recent comments?
Let's see. Thought that would do that, but I guess not. But this is it, isn't it? Am I
That
sharing
could
my
be.
screen? Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
That was a good job finding that. Yeah, that's me bringing up the issue on a form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not it.
Oh, this is
But
not. This is something else.
That's a form. And at the
Okay.
moment we're talking about grids, but that's an interesting case right there. And I think I'd like to ask your guys' thoughts on that. Take a look at that screenshot of the form where it's not full width.
Mm-hmm.
Did that just happen to me, or do you guys see that in BS5 specifically?
I haven't seen that, but in your oh your original theme was also BS5, and all you did was change the theme, and suddenly it wasn't doing that anymore.
Right.
So
So
that
it's
would
tied
say
to the theme.
that maybe there's some style in your theme that sounds like overriding whatever the width setting for this specific whatever the style is, that's setting the
Yeah, scroll down to the
width.
bottom. That's what the thing was.
Yeah.
So there's a stacked class container within container was being overridden by the theme. And now by setting the width of the container, now I'm in control of it again.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I think that answers the question. It was just me. So that's a DNN Go theme, and there's nothing against the DNN Go theme. They just have a class that is competing with
Yeah.
an action form class.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot with different themes that sometimes they have classes in there that just do something different, and you got to kind of track it down.
Mhm.
Earlier this week I was dealing with some white text on a white background, and it was exactly that. It was something in an alternate theme that
Mhm.
was causing it. So I guess I have to do a search again.
Maybe column width, maybe.
Try that. Again. I don't see your name there.
Sorry, my bad for bringing this up and not having a link. Yeah, we can talk about something else. I'll find it, but while we're talking.
Okay. I'd say it must be in here somewhere, but in this.
It might actually be over there in feature requests.
Oh yeah, that's possible too. And I see that you have some new feature requests, and that was on my list to get to. So let's take a look at these. So save and back for forms and grids. Oh.
You know,
Yeah.
It's kind of a silly thing to even bring up and talk about, but at the same time, it's not. When I'm put a form in manage mode and I do something to it, and I go up and click on save, and then I put my mouse, I hover it right over the back button so I can hit it after it's finished reloading. But then it jumps down and then it jumps up higher that I have to scroll the wheel to get the back button back down where I can get to it. So it's like I'm doing this little dance, trying to like track down that back button. And I couldn't count how many times I do that in a day. It's like over and over and over and over. So it just occurs to me, if it was save and back, I'd be done. And it would be a simple button for you guys to add. And we've got save and back in like workflows and stuff like that. So
well,
and
I've kind of been mentioning something similar to this for quite a while, but it's not quite what you're saying, save and back. What I had proposed, and for whatever reason, it just no traction, is the ability to call actions from another button or area. I mean, all of our actions have an ID number attached to them. So for example, if you had a save and then you created another button called save and close, you can have the save and close call the action to do the save from the save button, and then add one action underneath that call to close. So that way, also maintainability, you're just going to be updating your save code in the save button. The save and close button doesn't have a duplicate of that code.
Yeah,
it just
I think that's something
that
that's
code.
A little bit different than what Mark's talking about. But yeah, I can see, I definitely see the advantage of that as well. Yep. Yeah, because that way it avoids a lot of duplication of actions, which we end up doing a lot. Yep.
Exactly, because that's one of the things, almost all of my forms, I have a save and then I have a close button.
Yeah.
And I would love to just have a save that keeps me on the form and a save and close that would save my data and close the form in one shot.
Where all
But
your
if
actions
I
aren't
do
repeated.
that,
Yeah.
exactly. If I do that, then I literally have to duplicate all my actions in two buttons. And then every time I make a change to that logic, I have to make a change in multiple places.
Yep.
You know, I
Agreed.
know it was even said, oh, well, turn it into like a workflow. And it's like, but it still has the problem of if you make a change to the workflow that touches upon the import values, the
Mhm.
parameters, you still have to modify in two spots.
But
You
you
have to
can't.
modify the incoming, data.
Yeah, but you can't. Right. There's that, and also you can't put a data source refresh, in a workflow, right? So you have to,
Mhm.
if you want to refresh the underlying data on the page, you would have two of those actions
You got to
for
jump out
your
of the
for your
workflow.
save and close button.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yep, absolutely. Um, Mark, what you were talking about, I think, was when you're editing, but not in this mode, and when you actually have your editing open in another tab, um, and you click save, and then you have to click back in order to go back to the page you were on.
Mhm.
Something I was going to add on here is that I feel like that it would also be nice when you're in this mode, when you're in the page builder mode of editing modules, because often what I'm doing is clicking save, waiting, and then clicking the refresh. If there was a way we could combine that, do a save and refresh, that would be a cool thing as well.
Yeah, same
Yeah,
concept.
these are very little things, but they're things that help us in our busy days, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the category I
yeah,
would put it into.
yeah, mhm, yeah.
Sorry, I misunderstood, Mark. I thought you were referring to the design of forms, not the back end.
You had a good situation, Ben. I was listening.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I
Usually,
definitely
see, I don't have that particular situation that you have because usually what I do is I always open up the form and edit mode
both
in a different tab.
just go back and forth. Yeah,
So, right,
yeah,
I flip between the tabs. So I'm always
yeah.
just hitting save. I'm never hitting back. If I want to go back, I just click on the other tab to see my results and I refresh the page.
I usually
Yep.
do the same thing too, but there's sometimes I just want to pop in, change something, pop out, and I know I'm not going to be there do it going back and forth. So, you
Mm.
know, six of one, half a dozen the other.
Hi, Jim. I see you joined us.
Welcome,
Yeah.
Jim.
So look at that other feature request.
Yeah. Um, so be able to read the action title even when the action is expanded.
I think you need to go in. Well, there you can look at the picture. There, the top section, we can see the titles of each action. We can read the entire title.
Oh, yep,
That's cool. Okay.
yep.
As soon as you expand one of them, you can't read the title anymore.
Mm-hmm. Because it becomes an editable field that's not
That's
expanding
right.
wide enough yet
And
to.
it's not wide enough.
Yeah.
And when you've got it, look at the example, those titles are similar. 1, 2, 3, in a
You need to
stack.
know which attachment
Yep. I need
option
to know the
you're
end. I
working
need
with.
to
Yeah.
see the whole title.
Yep.
So it doesn't make sense to cut it off.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's another one of those little trivial things, but it's not really. It's getting in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you there. Cool. Thanks for putting those in.
Okay, and then in the chat for the meeting, I posted the link to the Conowith situation in a grid. The end to this posting says add that class app dash text box.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Yep.
That's
So
obviously, I
that's,
think that's something that could be added to the product,
yeah, I think
at a
it's a
class.
pretty easy thing. Yep. So
Yeah.
um, definitely bring that up as well. Cool. Thanks. Let's see, Jim, since you joined, did you have anything you wanted to talk to us about? I think if you're talking, we can't hear you. I see your mute indication went off, but we can't hear you. Okay, well, I think we got through everything I wanted to. Let's see. He talked about feature requests. I don't think we really need to go into ghost stories or dark corners right now. So I think with that, unless I'll make a final call, anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Cool. Well, thank you for. Look at this. With 3 people, we got through an entire hour, and it was an active discussion. Thank you very much. That's very cool. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I appreciate everyone being here, and I will stop the recording.